Welcome to Musings with Morales. I'm Morales. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to kind of have an ad hoc conversation tonight, a little bit off of our normal cadence. We're shooting on a Tuesday rather than a Wednesday, which we normally do. I'll be out of town traveling, but we're really just going to kind of have some banter on a couple things, really looking at professionalism from a broad lens. And I think tying in a little bit about our role as parents or as mentors and how that kind of intertwines with professionalism. So Paco and I are going to have some banter on that. We're both fathers of many, but we'll also have a guest joining us, Jonathan De La Paz, who's an established and successful healthcare owner that has some really strong beliefs that he has incorporated into his practice, but also just into some exciting new, like us, podcasts and content creation. So, I think you're in for a treat tonight. Jonathan De La Paz, thank you for joining us. Paco, looking for a great banter session with you.
You're listening to Musings with Morales, brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Kind of figured we'd freestyle a little bit and really just kind of play to the theme and really get into some musing, some thoughts. But of course, as always, we'll try and mesh with something that is valuable to professionals in healthcare, to professionals in dialysis, which is something I really focus on. But I got to thinking about this thing, professionalism, over really I think it's an ongoing thing, but over the last week, it's really struck me pretty deep to the core. And, I want to chat with you all and kind of go over some of the framework of professionalism, kind of take a look at maybe some of the challenges or the burdens of professionalism and how it kind of evolves in your culture, your behavior as you grow, as you get older. I can tell you that my first career out of high school that was like a full-time thing and really bringing home, I guess, good money, benefits, things like this. I was a union iron worker. I worked in Local 416. It's a Los Angeles base, but reinforcing and structural steel iron workers. Went through a apprenticeship program. I know we've talked with some folks here on the podcast about apprenticeships, and I think that might be something to tap into when we think about professionalism, as well as kind of the gauntlet we have to go through to become whatever title it is we're looking for, whether it's at the time, my first career, a journeyman iron worker. I had to go through a 3-year apprenticeship, 6 periods of apprenticeship, studies, and kind of, I guess, the treatment of a newbie from all the people I worked with, which, I think we could get into a long conversation about tolerance towards like a culture of hazing in different professions, right? Like you got to kind of sink or swim really quick, right? And there might be sharks in your industry that really challenge your ability to stick around in the thing that you're applying yourself to. So like I said, I started out in this profession as an iron worker. I went through the apprenticeship. I made it to become a journeyman. I worked alongside with my father and my uncle for many of the projects that I was on, which really helped a lot because I think when I started, I was like 140 pounds, Paco, and lifting this massive amount of steel. My dad wasn't much heavier, if at all, than I was, but he had this man strength, right? And when I started working with him, he was in his, I guess, mid 40s, and he could kick my ass all over the iron pile, they call it, right? But I'm kind of looking back at some of the people, because I keep in touch with people. I connect with people or reconnect with people that have been part of my past, and I can say honestly that hard work, that culture that I learned as an iron worker, and even withstanding an apprenticeship and having to kind of go home and face my dad and my uncle about the days we had, it built a lot of who I am today as far as the hard work that I'll put into a completely different discipline. But when I think about all the guys I grew up with going through that apprenticeship, there were a lot of, it's kind of like a rough and tough type of industry. A lot of drinking. There was drugs. There was a lot of guys that I worked with that had problems with the law and with relationships and things like that. And I was no exclusion, When I look now and at myself, I'm 47. I've completely changed from the kid I was when I started. I was barely 18 when I started in that trade. And now when I look back at the guys the guys and the girls that I worked with out there that are like the same time as me, they've grown a lot too. And they've kind of changed their image of profession from, the rough and tough and, the bad things in life that maybe were part of kind of the culture back then in the early 90s or the mid 90s, I should say. The drinking and the drugs and, the partying and stuff like that. Like they've turned into leaders in communities with workforce boards. Like they've dropped all those habits, a lot of them by hitting, points in their life that it was like, quit or lose everything, or maybe you lost everything. Right. But like I can say, like kind of looking back and reconnecting with some folks from that particular time in my life, that I'm really inspired on how we can grow as human beings, how men can change from that culture of, I don't know, what do you call it? Is it safe to say that, I'm talking to a group of people that have experienced bad decisions when they're young, maybe to impress people, maybe to follow suit, maybe just because it feels good, whatever you're doing. And then as you grow, you've grown in life, you've seen that those things only slowed you down, maybe hurt you, maybe hurt the people around you. And then when you think about your profession, like how does that actually tie into being a professional? So like, I know this is kind of a deep thought, but as a professional, if you work in the gym, if you work at the grocery store, if you work in a hospital, or if you work out in the field as a construction worker, are you only a professional while you're working? I question that often when you clock out, if you get a clock out and you start to engage in things that are not of the profession, does that behavior then reflect on you as a professional? Does it affect you as a professional? I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. And I'm going to kind of give an example of like the times when you're young and maybe you're in the environment where you do things like that, like drink or party or fight, or, you're making bad decisions, but you've got responsibilities as a professional. And Paco, like, it makes me think as myself as a dad. Like when I was in my first kid, I was 20 years old, right? And like the stuff that I was doing at 20 years old, I would never want my kids to do when they're three of them are around that age, right? I wouldn't want them to do. It's like, don't do that. Well, is there ever a time where it's like, well, you did it, you had to learn, right? I got to learn too.
How do I say it? We cannot not allow them to discover life for themselves, because that would be unfair, because we actually went against the grain.
Agreed.
Right?
I mean, but if I think about, now I put my professional cap on, is like, damn it, I'm a professional dad. Maybe I effed it up, in a lot of cases. Like, does that mean that I can't learn from those lessons now and help my kids to maybe avoid same mistakes? Or if I'm a preceptor in a healthcare setting, or if I'm a journeyman teaching an apprentice iron worker, like, hey, like these guys who I see, I'm kind of going back to these guys who I've reconnected with. They got these stories, man, that help kids that are of a certain mold a lot of times, because like that job's damn tough, man. Like tough people go do it. It's not just like smart people go do it. People who got like hard hands and big shoulders, right, and strong backs and stuff like that, they go do this. But with that kind of that attitude a lot of times comes, fighting, like I said, drinking, drugs, things like this. And a journeyman ironworker, I can remember when I was an apprentice, like, hey, don't be effing around, Morales, right? Don't be doing that. Like, don't drink on the job. Don't do, like, hey, guys, I'm telling a lot here today. But I can tell you I learned from these things. And, like, when I look back at my kids or people that, I'll call them my kids too, whether I'm helping them with stuff, I don't want them to do the same thing. So it's like there's this line, like, it's a tough line of, like, hey,
it is.
You have to experience for yourself. You have to make mistakes. But at the same time, like, you got these people who probably you had it too, Paco. They were like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. You got to be like this. And you're going like, I got to learn. And when you learn, you're like, damn it, I wish I would have.
They were right.
That's the hardest thing.
Which is why they say youth is wasted on the young.
No shit. Youth is wasted on the lung. The young,
yeah.
I like that. Yeah, the lung too, right? But that's true. I mean, if we knew what we know now, then, like,
right?
How much, right?
Yeah.
So tying this back to professionalism, and as a dad, all those members of Local 416, I think they're now in Buena Park. Like, I just want to give a huge shout out to Local 416 iron workers, my dad, my uncle included, all the guys I worked with. You taught me so much. I made friends that I feel like I still have today. And I'm looking forward to actually bringing some of these guys on the podcast to kind of tell these stories, because, when we think about becoming professionals, like, hey, the world needs a lot of jobs that are not TikTok famous or Instagram famous or Facebook famous anymore, right? And not everybody's going to be a doctor, nurse, a lawyer, things like this, but we need, like, bridges. We need buildings. We need parking structures.
Oh, believe me, you're saying buildings, parking structures. I just have to say this. So on Friday, remember you wanted to do a podcast on Friday. I said I can't because I was going to shoot a music video, right? Mm-hmm. So we were at Alameda in LA, where American Apparel used to be.
Okay.
You familiar with that area?
Mm-hmm.
So that one building that we were in, one floor, there were 5 floors. It's one of these old buildings that they refurbished. The 5th floor, every studio was a TikTok studio.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's how powerful.
Yes.
And, hey, here we are sitting here doing a podcast. Obviously, we recognize the value of having a voice that's being heard or that is being sought out, right? And hopefully we're fulfilling that today. Again, off the norm of really, like, focusing in on health and things like this. But when I tie in professionalism, like, we all grow, we learn. We had people telling us this is the way things should be. You shouldn't do that. I know because I've been there before. And let's think about healthcare really quick. And I got a question for everybody, because I see we have a few people with us today and a few different channels. If you need healthcare, will you get it? First of all, would you go seek it out? If that person was able to do whatever procedure you needed, whether it be a surgery or you need dialysis or you need your blood drawn or you just needed to talk to a therapist or something like that. And forgive me, guys, for I'm not going to dive too deep into this, but what if they had a different political view than you? Would that matter? Would you be okay with a doctor who believed and voted completely opposite of you?
We're talking about U.S. politics or politics around the world?
Let's talk, just general. Like, somebody who believes differently than you on the way that the government where you live should be ran, by who it should be ran. Would it matter to you if their skill set had everything that was needed they were the best at that procedure, guys, but they voted for, and I think we can maybe look at this in the United States where, like, there's such
polarization.
Yeah. That some people would say, like, I don't even want to live next door to somebody who votes this way or that way. So as professionals now, I'm just curious if anybody has an opinion. Does the way that we vote roll into our professionalism? And then does the level of confidence that we put into the people that are appointed to positions like healthcare or nominees for different sort of government offices, whether their beliefs, their behaviors, their professional history, does that come into play with their skill set as whatever it is, a politician, an iron worker, which, you know, one thing we used to say about the iron workers was like, you're not an iron worker unless you've been in jail. It was kind of a running joke because like so many people had, you know, issues, and,
Right.
you know, they do a lot of things through like homeboy industries and stuff like this to help people to truly reform. Again, great place to go earn great living and pick up benefits packages and things like that. But, you know,
And you know what? Some of them even start their own ironworks business. Huh?
yeah, that have completely reformed. So, you know, back to the question, like, would it matter to you, the person that is caring for you, performing a procedure, voted differently than you? And I see that we're not getting a lot of response from that. So let's ask it another way. Would it matter to you if they were a different religion than you?
I was going to say, because when I was younger, I was made to believe that if a person is from a different religion, they have different sets of morals. And as I gotten older, professionalism came into play. Of course, there are boundaries. Like, I've had friends from different religion. I mean, we're cool, but after the workplace, I'm not invited to family gatherings or personal gatherings because I'm of a different religion.
Yeah.
And there's that. Even in the Philippines, where you have different denominations, and no, not denominations, but religions. Yeah. So my former bandmate joined a different religion. We were not allowed to be at his wedding.
Oh, wow. Because you weren't of the same.
Yes. I mean, we were allowed to be at the reception.
Okay.
But not at the
I
wedding.
think I've had that experience before, actually.
Right?
I can't
Something
remember
like
with who, but I think I had a similar experience. And we have a couple answers to the question here. So JJ, inpatient PD and stroke nurse here. Hi, and great, thanks for joining us. Have many friends and coworkers that are against my political views, but because we have respect for each other, it doesn't interfere so far with friendship and how our jobs are being performed. It's really being respectful that needs to take place, and I agree. I think tolerance and you know that's like founding principles of, you know, the United States is like, you know, that we have rights for certain speeches and beliefs and practices that, you know, we can coexist, right? So I agree with that. Anybody have any experiences that are maybe different than that, like with colleagues, since that's the example here? I can tell you, I've seen some, not recently, but like towards the last election, I actually saw some really strong divisions in people in the industry that I work in,
Right.
For voicing from both sides of the aisle that they were voting or leaning towards that type of politics, and others just basically, you know, for like I'll kind of say it like the way I heard it was like, well, if you believe that, then like you're stupid.
You know what?
And
Mike?
it was from both sides, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a theory, and maybe people in the audience can chime in whether I'm in line or out of line with this theory. I remember growing up in the Philippines, not being allowed to talk about your competitor. Even advertising, you cannot say Coke versus Pepsi. It has to be Coke versus brand X. Then when Betamax and VHS tapes from the United States started pouring in to the Philippines, my aunt would record programs and send it to the Philippines. I saw commercials, and here in the US, you can actually diss Pepsi if you were Coke.
Yeah.
Right? And the local, when I say local, born and raised and cultured in the States, they were okay with it. You can look somebody in the face, call him whatever you want, as long as it's nothing personal, as long as it has everything to do with what the topic is all about. You can you can diss him from head to toe and it's nothing personal.
Fair game. Yeah.
Right? But then again, me as an immigrant, in order for me to assimilate, I had to forget being thin-skinned and take everything with a grain of salt.
I think that's a great part of professionalism as well.
Right?
Yeah.
But then again, how many immigrants come to the States raising their families with that value that they bring in?
Right.
And you're bringing in people who are thin-skinned, wherein you can't criticize, you can't speak your mind. What disappeared through the decades, not through the years, but through the decades, discourse disappeared. Argumentation and debate used to be a subject, used to be something that people enjoyed doing for social studies. Now, no, we can't do that.
Yeah. I think, from the folks who've chimed in, Camila chimed in, that politics and I guess beliefs, maybe even Camila, shouldn't matter from the end of if I'm the patient and the person who's giving me care, right? I sincerely mean this question. I'd love if I knew the answer was that, there's no bias in this, but I'm just curious, caregivers or healthcare professionals, guys, okay? What if, let's switch it and say the person in the seat is opposite politics, opposite football team, whether it's American football or global football, opposite religion. They have a identity or a culture that you don't agree with. They're a criminal. And let's take criminal, man, get me started on that. It goes from here to here, right?
Where are you taking this?
Does it matter? Does it matter to you as a professional? Can you use all your skill set, all of it, including your heart and your brain, your level of compassion that you'd give to people that are easy for you to like because you identify with them, right? Can you give it all to somebody who is on the complete opposite end of what you believe is right? So I'll give you an example, guys, and I'll just, I'm going to, I don't know if it's vulnerability I'll show here, but it's weakness maybe. Years ago, I was on a consult job, and I was to help bring in certain type of systems into high-level federal penitentiary. It was healthcare related, and I went in and trained some staff off-site for about a week. And in these conversations, I hear the staff who work inside of this prison talking about things in a way that, I grew up kind of liking most of my patients, to tell you the truth. I had some criminals and some mean and nasty people in my chairs, but when I got here and I heard the way these people kind of talked about the patients that they were working with, I said, how could you do that? You're here to take care of, how could you talk like that? How, at a dinner? We're here to take care of people. We're here to help them improve their life. They're prisoners, but they're people. And this lady looked me like dead in my eye with this cold ass look, man. And she said, "You don't know what they did, and you don't want to know." Ooh. And I said, "Holy shit!" Like everything went through my head. But I'll tell you the things that most of the people that in this prison did made it very difficult for me to use all of my heart and soul and not be distracted. I'm again, weakness, vulnerability, not be distracted by how horrible I felt these individuals were. And that takes a damn lot for me, guys, because I don't judge. You know what I mean? But this stuff, and I'll just tell you, my two tolerance, guys, again, I'll be very transparent and open with you, is you hurt women or children and I got big problems.
Yeah.
I got big problems. So yeah, that was the last time I took a consulting job like that. I figured out that just wasn't where I could really give my all. So any limits for you guys out there that would kind of hold you back from being able to give your all to the people who need your care. Camila again.
Yeah, Ridochi. Yeah.
So we're trained from the moment we enter school. Camila's a licensed vocational nurse, LVN. Not to judge our patients, whether they're criminal, racist, rapists, etc. We treat everyone with the same and give them the empathetic care therein. So, I think that's huge, what the training and that goes to maybe say like how much training, maybe I missed that training, Camila, because, I wasn't a nurse trainee, and I learned how to take care of a family member that I loved, like he helped me in life. I loved him. So I helped him out and then ended up going into clinics, and I pretty much liked all my patients. Like they were cool. And again, I had some people who did some stuff, but, it's a filter, a shield that us nurses have to build within us. That's why nurses are like really heaven sent, right?
Yes. Thank you for your service, Camila.
Yeah, they have that ability to yield 100%, and think about the person that needs care, like the origins of nursing, right? What's up, Justin? How you doing tonight? So, guys, let's just kind of hit a couple bullet points, if you will, about this topic that we're on, which is professionalism and growth, and the behaviors of a professional look different, right? Depending on which profession it is. Like if we were to say like, what is professionalism? I mean, it's mainly characterized by or conforming to technical and ethical standards of a profession. You're exhibiting a courteous and conscientious and generally business-like manner in a workplace. So, here's something I didn't understand when I was an iron worker. There was like, these guys that came from the iron pile, right? I remember some of these guys. They were iron workers, maybe graduated high school, right? And opened up business, and they'd come on the job and they'd really, I think we called it bird dogging, if I'm not mistaken. They're just watching your ass and like, hey, hurry up, run.
Yeah.
But please, you got to place more, right? I just remember it, like it was really run. And I'd be like, hey, I'm doing my job, right? I didn't take it like I owned it. But like my dad, he did. He ran his ass off, man, and he beat his body up, and so did a lot of guys that were in his era.
But Michael, you see, you were meant for something else.
Hey, I think I had to go through that, to tell you the truth.
You had to go through that.
Yeah.
That wasn't your destination. No.
And that's a lot of us, right?
Yep.
We start somewhere and we find out, that there's a road, whether it was already connected or whether it's a new road, because we started getting out there and looking at stuff, right? But yeah, this professional behavior, I never treated it like a business when I was like my business when I was out there on the pile. Other people did. They made it. They became foremen. They became superintendents. They became business agents of the unions and working with like all the local municipalities, counties, states for funding and things like this, right?
From being an iron worker?
From being an iron worker.
So that means even if they became public servants, they were still with a criminal record, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I say some of them, some of them, I don't want to categorize all iron workers or construction, but it didn't matter. Like, hey, you want to do a job, you can go, you can come back here. You want to show up to work. And here's one thing that, like, I'll tell you, I sucked at back then, but anybody who knows me knows that I talk about this all the time, is on time, every time, damn it. On time, every time. You're late, get out. And that's how, like, I tell you, I showed up on jobs and they said, go home. 15 minutes late or something like that. So I got to the point, I remember this so clear. Like, I hated it so much, man. I'd maybe make the wrong turn or something. I'd drive 45 minutes, make the wrong turn somewhere along the way, and then I'd just go like, I'm going to be late anyway, so I'm going to go get breakfast and go home or go, hang out something.
I'm going to let you read what JJ actually posted. Too long.
JJ. All right. So thanks, JJ. It's important to set that aside, because if you're in healthcare, you take an oath to take care of anyone and everyone, regardless who and what they are. We face discrimination as well with healthcare workers. I agreed. Management would say, suck it up in a professional way. Hard to do for some, but it's not just healthcare workers. I've been a nurse for, 18 years, and have encountered racism from patients as well. Yes, me as well. Like, for example, during the whole terrorism attack, then I encountered patients who didn't want Muslim nurses, and during this COVID, patients didn't want Chinese nurses. Great points. It's terrible as being short staff as it is. For some reason, accommodations for patient satisfaction is always necessary, and most of the time granted. You're right. I remember, when 9/11 happened, I had some very unique experiences. Kind of my beliefs at the time religiously, and the church that I was going to basically kind of, endorsing that sort of behavior or racism, prejudice, based solely off religion, which took me away from, that took me out of that mix, because I just, that's not what I'm about. I think even early in life, I was very, curious about people. Like, I haven't seen these people on the other side of the world. Like, I don't know why they believe or what they've been through. I was having a conversation with my son, and he was talking about some folks that are running in a crowd around him, and they're of certain backgrounds. And he was like, man, they're crazy. And I was like, yeah, we're not talking about LA streets, man. We're talking about stuff that, life was about fighting and war and things like this. And when you have that sort of individual or somebody who comes from another country that has seen different things, like you talked about thin skin, sometimes you don't want to see what happens when you break the skin on certain people because they've experienced things. But we can never kind of just bucket people of any sort that they're all bad, that they're all on one agenda. And then as far as the discrimination during COVID, yeah, I saw a lot of that. All of my children are half Filipino, right? And they actually experienced some of the tension that was created, like JJ says, of people's perception towards Asians as a whole.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that happening in Orange County, if you remember.
I do. We have a guest, Jonathan. Jonathan, say hi.
Hey, Jonathan. Man, everybody we get on has great guitars in their background, man.
You got to put some guitars in your background too, Mike.
But then the challenge is going to be somebody's going to expect me to play
That's what it is.
What's that?
Paco knows I'm only showing off.
Thanks for joining us, Jonathan. So what intrigued you about the conversation tonight? What can you say about professionalism and topics we've been touching on?
When we have a responsibility, and especially in the healthcare industry, you know what? In life, right? When you commit to something, you do it. I think that's the problem that we have in this country. I'm an immigrant, right? So I grew up in a culture where, sorry to say this, right? The Filipino culture is one of the greatest in the world when it comes to caring. But there is a part there is because of the economy, because of life situation, what is it for me? It's just part of it, right? And then I migrated here. I'm not saying that America is perfect, but what I've noticed in this, when a simple trip to the emergency room, you need something, just a basic knowledge of when you go into any kind of emergency room in the United States, it doesn't matter what your color is. If you're injured, you need kind of healthcare. They have a job to do to take care of you. That's one of the, when you, as an immigrant, been to different countries, unfortunately had, some healthcare issues. But in this country, I've noticed you go to the emergency room, no questions asked, you're going to be taken care of. The financial part will be after. Right? So with that basic context, right, I see that in many of, especially when, back when Paco and I migrated in the United States back in 2001. And I noticed that, correct me if I'm wrong with my observation, that if you're given the job, you're getting the responsibility, you have a task, do it. You're not supposed to, like many claims that this is the least racist country in the world because it doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your economic situation is.
Have you heard of the test from Harvard? I think it's online. There's a implicit bias test. Yeah, so it's a bunch of questions, but it kind of opens your eyes to things that implicit, explicit, right? Like, hey, actually, I don't like the team that you root for, but I don't tell you it. But like, I don't invite you to the parties because you vote for the other team.
You know what? I'm not to put Jonathan on blast, but when I met him, he was that type of person. It was through me that he started opening his eyes to.
It was okay.
Yeah, I'm like he would.
There's some truth. There is some truth to that. I will admit. Yes, there is some truth to that. No, that's a good question, right? When you do a job interview, right? I've done that with nurses and CNAs and LVNs. I don't ask those questions. I ask what's the task at hand.
Yeah.
If they're qualified, if they have the ability based on my judgment, by the way, everybody makes judgments, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody does. I heard earlier when I jumped in, one of the things that I keep telling people, that everybody makes judgment. When I say Paco is handsome, that's a judgment. I might be wrong with my judgment.
No, you're right. You're right.
I was just going to say, like, you're getting affirmation from him.
I say Paco is handsome, but I could be wrong in my judgment, right? So whether it's a positive or negative judgment, we all make judgment. But the question is, are you making the right judgment? In this case, I would make a wrong judgment that Paco is handsome. That's the wrong judgment. So everybody makes judgments. So now, whenever I do an interview of any employee, there are a set of questions, and definitely not part of that is, what's your religion?
Yeah, you'd be in big trouble for that one, right?
Are you black? Are you white? Are you Mexican? Are you Filipino?
Yeah,
those are not questions. Mm-hmm. What matters is the merit. What matters? Do you have the capability to perform the task at hand? Here's the thing. It's a little bit of a caveat, though, when it comes to values, right? When it comes to nurses, I would always tell my nurses, or the CNAs, or the LVNs, I will tell them, what you've studied at school, managing medication, taking care of the patient or the resident or whatever that is. And when it comes to patient care, that can be learned, the technical aspect of it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the value of the person, I ask, are you in this because you need to make money, or do you have the heart for it? I ask that question too. It's just a side note that I would ask, because I need to watch out for, like, is this person just needs a job or really passionate about it? Because in the healthcare business, I always say this to a lot of people, you have to have the heart for it, or else you'll be miserable.
Oh, agreed. What is your specialty, Jonathan? What does your company do?
Oh, okay. Well, I do manage home health, a couple of hospice companies involved in that. We have a nonprofit. It's called Noble Quest Health Foundation. Shout out to those guys. Mm-hmm. And it's a nonprofit. We also do congregate living facilities and recuperative and independent living.
He started out as he graduated as a PT.
Okay.
Came to the States, became a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's a loaded story, brother. You know my story. Paco knows my story.
He took care of this lovely old woman named Virginia. He took her to the Philippines.
Oh wow!
Twice.
Mm-hmm. When she passed away, the family gave him a simple, a goodwill inheritance to start a business. Nothing concrete, just the opportunity to start a business, and then there he is.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's care, right?
We're actually writing a book about that. So.
Oh man, definitely fill us in, and we'll help you to share the story, Jonathan. That's a great one. I'm curious. So we're on this like. Well, what's on the other side of the relationship shouldn't really matter for a business relationship, a professional relationship, because I have a task, like you said. Either there's somebody needs it, somebody's going to do it, right? Yeah. And it's really it's about like the skill set, the experience, the dependability, the performance moving forward, that's going to nurture that relationship, right? But let's talk specifically about like the peripherals of relationships. So again, I've done like, I was an iron worker, right? When I was a kid. And I'll give you an example of a peripheral, right? So we're working on a building, and it's in a certain part of LA. And you guys know the classic movie shot of construction workers and a pretty girl walks by. Like whistles and hollers and stuff like this, right? Mm-hmm. Actually, that's addressed on construction sites. Like you can't do that, right? But of course, there are going to be some people that are young men, probably, or young people, young hearts, that say, it doesn't matter that much what I do. I'm going to go ahead and like flirt with the people walking by, right? And then maybe the city or the project gets some sort of fine for harassment or like stuff. It hurts, right? It can cause damage. In healthcare, we have family members, right? You congregate livings and skilled nursing facilities. We have visitors. We have contracted guests, right, that are coming in for like labs and different sort of services and things like this. So the level of professionalism that we have is not really just singular, right? Like with the person that we're giving the care, it's also everybody around.
Let me interrupt for a second, okay? So the congregate living facilities, like one of the things that I almost do the interviews on the patients and the families. Mm-hmm. You know what? My main concern is not really the patient, because the patient needs care no matter what.
That's right.
But what a main factor for me to admit a patient, because we can refuse, we have the right to refuse, right?
Yeah.
If we cannot perform certain task for a patient, But let me just say this. I'll be honest here. When I see for the most part, when we encounter problems, it's not the patient. I would say 90% of our problems, when we do have problems, are not because of the patient. It's because of the families.
Right.
But of course, we extend the grace that they need for those who are sick, for those, especially the dementia part. Uh-huh. The dementia part is sometimes you would allow the families to come in and visit their folks, right? Family members. And they would engage in conversations where the patient obviously doesn't have the capacity to engage in for example, right? When the patient says, "Oh, where's my car or where's my house," right? Which probably not true, but it doesn't exist anymore because they sold it or whatever, right? And they would go to the ends of the world to explain it and make the patient understand. Yeah. The patient has dementia.
Yeah.
So many times, and this is my classic, my typical conversation with families, and this is how I would always 100%. This is how I was always described, and I would always train them and teach them. I would tell them the person who has dementia. The person who has dementia has no capability of entering our reality. So what do? You enter their reality. You don't pull them into that entire reality. You go into their reality. Case in point, when they say, "Where's my?" I remember having this conversation basically about 15 years ago. The caregivers back then would engage him in a conversation. No, there's no car in the backyard, in the parking lot. What are you talking about? And I reiterated, no, that's not how you have a conversation like that. So I would enter into the conversation, and for the past 15, 20 years, this is what I do. As simple as this. You know what? I saw, we had this conversation yesterday, even though it's not true. remember I told you it had a broken axle or something. You got to enter that reality, and then you tell them it's going to come tomorrow. We had your car repaired, and remember, I'll come up with a made up receipt if it has to be, if you have to go that route, right? You have to just basically role play and play along, and then they'll be walking out, going back to their room.
So it's kind of managing the episode, or that episode in a lapse of memory, and inquiring on something, just managing that, getting through that, and then it's kind of over at that point with a lot of people who have dementia, right? I want to kind of delve in a little bit to the realization that, and I kind of tiptoe around this a little bit, Jonathan, in saying that we have problems with families, whereas like I kind of think about like there may be more complexities, that need to be managed, right? And it's like when I think about whether it's a alert and oriented patient or a family, and kind of the case that you pointed out of kind of dealing with something in the wrong way, I always think about it this way, and I don't, you guys tell me if I'm wrong about this, JJ, Hungry Jilly. I always tend to, as a professional in healthcare, I tend to go like you did, what can I do to help this come across? How do I help the family to communicate better? How do I empower them with the tools, right? Do I need to reinforce those? Do I need to teach my staff to help to reinforce those? Do I need to get some videos or some pamphlets or stuff like this? And I think quite often when we think about professionalism, you brought up the word commitment, right, to a task. And it's like, hey, I got a task to take care of somebody, but I also have on the forefront of my thinking as a healthcare practitioner, Jonathan, is like, I have a desired outcome, and it's always with a lot of optimism that I go into taking care of somebody. So when we have challenges, I always come back to myself and to my team and go like, how do we get through this? Do you guys take the same approach, JJ, Jonathan, that, you go back to the team, you enter into like a QAPI meeting or something like this, or maybe something smaller, an IDT, something like this, to say like, hey, where are we messing up? Is it us, or is it just, the individual we're trying to transfer knowledge to?
So here's what I think. That's why I have a job. That's why I'm in this industry. Is it's repetition. I mean, I say this a lot when it comes to when people would say training, right? Mm-hmm. You can only go. You can go through classes. You can go through YouTube, right? But you have the secret to learning this and mastering this is commitment and repetition. Mm-hmm. You can go through any training that you want, but the experience part, getting a chance to experience this, is the most valuable thing. So it's hard when in this particular case, right, that we're talking about when it comes to, training people and teaching them how to do it. You just, as a leader, I would learn through the years, whether it's being a leader or as someone who employs people, you have to show it. Yeah. And this is the part when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the psychological part of it, you have to show how it's done.
Yeah.
It's hard, maybe it's a good thing we live in a YouTube world where you can record yourself and see, record something, but you have to do it in repetition because it's not going to work. You're not going to learn this overnight.
Yeah.
It has to be a continuous process. You grab every opportunity, right? And I tell it to everybody. When I'll just give you an example, right? Okay, here's an example. A patient punched me. I had a slightly bloody nose because I got, I put my guard down. I was trying to just calm him down, and I thought I was calming down, and all of a sudden he took a swing at me. Mm-hmm. Every caregiver, every staff, there were 3 staff that day, a nurse and 2 CNAs at the congregate, and saw me. It's like, one CNA said, "You're not angry? It's actually my fault." And it's like, huh? Mm-hmm. So that mindset, right? It's through experience. and it's an opportunity for me to teach them, right? If that happens to one of my CNAs, of course they get angry. But through the experience part, it has to be in repetition. Through years of experience, it's just I believe, I could be wrong, but that's been my experience. That's just how it is as far as I'm concerned. But when I said to them, it's actually my fault that I got punched, I put my guard down. The guy is demented. Unfortunately, he's confused. He's depressed.
Yeah, right? So you have to be aware that
and
there's...
I would always tell them, you keep your distance.
Yeah.
I was too close to that to actually... Yeah. I'll look for that picture.
So Jonathan, you say we got to show them how it's done. It makes me think about another side of professionalism. And again, I'm going to open up more than I probably should, but some people who are watching probably remember these days. So I used to be a closer in a dialysis facility, right? I'd start late, I'd end late, I'd go shower, and I used to like to party when I was a kid. So I'd go out, club or drinking or something like this. And I would see like people, I used to go to like a local pub that was right behind a local hospital. And I would see doctors and nurses in their hospital scrubs getting jacked up. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, like, and like sometimes when I pass by certain hospitals around here, like I see on the street, there's a bunch of people there smoking cigarettes and vapes. And I wonder if you guys have an opinion on, as healthcare professionals, like, hey, we're not perfect. Like I'm trying a little bit to get off some pounds, right? I'm not a perfect physical specimen, but I preach keep your health keep yourself healthy and have good habits. So what do you guys think about that? Does that reflect on you as a professional that like, hey, take care of yourself, take care of something, smoke and drink, like what's that like? And while I say that, by the way, I got a bunch of bottles of whiskey behind me, so I'm not drinking anything tonight. Got to replace them with guitars.
Well, I remember Charles Barkley talking about this, right? He talked about this inside the NBA, and I think he's right. Many of us. Sometimes when I talk to people about certain things, certain issues, sometimes I would preach to myself. Sometimes I'm also speaking to myself.
Yeah.
So Charles Barkley talked about this. Should NBA players be role models? And he said no. He said no. Don't. You can be the best player that you can be, but because as a role model, as a person, when it comes to morality and things like that, they should not be. Just watch them play basketball. So I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that's to me. Look him up, and he actually.
I remember that
he was right. You probably saw that, right?
Yeah. So does that translate to healthcare to you, Jonathan? Like the doctor shouldn't be a role model?
I've seen here. I'm not gonna obviously in that company not name names, but doctors who would advise people of healthy habits and all that stuff, because that's what they would look at their blood. They would look at the blood work, right? Blood work. Oh, your liver is damaged, but I know for a fact that they drink a lot.
Yeah. Oh, I know plenty.
Who's in the medical field, and this is not even it's not even a secret, right? From health when you look at lung doctors, right, or anybody who's COPD, right? There are doctors who would advise you to do this, and then you go home, they smoke themselves, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean,
in the healthcare industry, we know what needs to be done, but not everybody does it. So,
do they do medications in the congregate living, like MedPass and stuff like this as well?
Yes. Well, the nurses, that's the job of the nurse. That's why we have 24/7 nursing care.
So, I'm not going to quote a reference here or have the citation. Maybe somebody can pull this up, but I've heard it discussed that, like, some of the highest rates of drug use are actually among healthcare professionals, and they're among like prescription narcotics and things like this. So, I mean, to the point, like, are we always role models? No. Is there a skill set that can outweigh bad habits in life? I can think about like some of these hospital type of series on Netflix and stuff, and it's like, oh, so and so's on, Adderall, and they haven't slept for 5 days to get them out, and oh, now you need help, stuff like this sort of stuff happens, right? But again, I always think about that when I pass by the hospital. It's like, I own a school, Jonathan, and I when we have students who smoke, I always say, like, do not go in front of our building and smoke your cigarettes, because it's like just for me, it's a horrible display. Not to say that people aren't going home and smoking and having bad habits, but like, I feel like, hey, what if you go to the pub in your whatever hospital scrubs and you're getting plastered, and then the person who their wife is there for surgery goes into the bar heartbroken because of everything that's going on, and they're indulging as well. But then they see the doctors and the nurses over there in their scrubs and uniforms. Like, how does that look, man?
Yeah, well, we have, in the healthcare industry, we have a responsibility, right? We all do. We signed up for this, and, it's kind of it's a social, I would say a social contract, right? That is, in baseball, it's the unwritten rule, right? That when you signed up for healthcare, you're try not to be a hypocrite. I mean, every single one of us are hypocrites in some way, some form.
Yep.
But we do our best we can to, if you want to go to a bar, make sure it's 20, 30 miles away from work. No one will recognize you, and you're not wearing your freaking uniform.
Yeah, it sounds like we're stripping or something, man.
You have the right to do that.
Isn't that the stripper?
I'm sorry, what?
I said, it sounds like we're stripping or something. Like, go far away. Sorry, guys.
Right?
But yeah, no, I mean, seriously though, I just, as I've grown in age, I think about these things a lot, right? I think about the same stuff as a father. Jonathan, kids? You have kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have kids. I have I have an 11-year-old girl. She is pursuing acting. And I have a 15-year-old son who is actually a well-known YouTuber on Roblox. He's got almost 300,000 subscribers. So,
yeah. And those guys, they're serious about their chat too.
Like, Jonathan doesn't have to work. It's his 15-year-old son.
His kids, yeah, I believe it, man.
Oh my gosh!
I mean,
I hope that's true. I hope that's true. I mean, we have this brand new podcast, that we're doing. It's called the Black and Brown. So I'm just basically riding on his popularity, and so is our. And we're launching another podcast. It's More to This Life, as it's a family channel.
It's called More to This Life is what it's called?
More to This Life podcast. So we're going to start it next week. But
cool.
It's actually transitioning from a comedy channel, because I do crazy stuff, to just to reaching out to a lot of people, a lot of kids in the world. Actually, I get Instagram messages. Asking if I could be their virtual father. It's another story that we can talk about next time. But
you have
really
an existing podcast as well, right? When you have running podcasts.
Say that again.
You have a currently running podcast as well.
Yes. The Black and Brown podcast. We just started it actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll definitely pop in the links in chat here. And kind of cross-pollinate the
you should bring Michael on your podcast, because both of you are very opinionated. Oh my God.
Oh gosh.
Maybe if I go on yours, I could give my opinions.
we were supposed to do once a week, but my guys was like, nope, we got to do this. We'll probably start doing it every day.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah, so I guess on that note, opinions, right? Your beliefs. And I'm not asking your beliefs specifically, but I would just say, like, us as professionals, okay? So Paco's he's one of my best friends, but he's also
sorry.
But he's also our podcast producer, right?
I'm so sorry.
But you just destroyed. What was my point? There was a word I was tapping into here. Paco, play back, man.
Your point
Oh my
was,
goodness.
your point was opinionated.
Yes,
Yeah.
got it. All right, thank you. So yeah, man, sorry. so opinions, right? So I might have told this before, Paco, but I remember years ago. Do you guys remember that tsunami in Japan?
Yes.
What was that, like 12 years ago or something? 13 years ago,
Less.
maybe?
The Fukushima power plant.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember we were in our first building when I had originally opened a dialysis education services, which is a vocational education institution, right? And we had a good sized class, and there was I want to say the entire class was Filipino. It was really a great group. But we had this lady in there that she was a very devout religious person. And she came to class just really like preaching hard, you know, about what individuals should believe. And that it was her job to make sure that they were presented with it, which I 100% respect. You know, I respect religion and culture. But then we were also talking about what we're talking about today, professionalism, right? And the therapy to a patient, right? So it's like, you know, we got into this conversation, and part of her reason for wanting to become a clinician was to go and convert, and not just convert, but actually have people that would find their first belief in a higher power, right? Which I respect. I think is great. But I asked, I said, what if you had an individual that was sitting there and believed and went religiously or with complete commitment and dedication to observe a certain type of faith, what is different than what you believe?
What you have, correct?
Would you still feel your job is the same? And she said, yeah, it is. And I said, do you find that that's a conflict for you as a professional? So, you know, I'd ask the same of individuals here, like, is it your job to go convert people? You know, hey, when we talk about religion, that's probably, you know, on your responsibility list to talk to people about it, right? But now you come into a world of a professional environment with different skins, thicknesses, different skin colors, different backgrounds and beliefs and histories. Is it appropriate to go tell the guy that in the morning he wakes up and he goes and prays to the tree in his backyard and go tell him that if you keep doing that, you're going to go somewhere you don't want to go. You should believe this.
Oh God, you know, Paco knows how. First of all, I am a Christian. I'm very involved with these conversations. You know, definitely, I'm one of those. I'm not one of those guys, and you know, I would place these conversations in the right places. And I think in a professional, you know, in a workplace, you have a task that you're supposed to do. You don't mix it up with anything else. Outside of that, yes, I am very, you know, if I get a chance to share my faith, and when I say I don't try to convert people, I ask them to think. I ask them to think. Like, for example, when people ask me why am I a Christian, typical answer that you would get is that, oh, because I grew up in church, or because my mom dragged me to church, or because my friends are going to church. What I always tell people is like, what I mean, you know, when I ask that question, because I do believe, because based on evidence, that the Bible is true, but it's in the right place, in the right time, in the right setting. I don't share my faith, you know, recklessly. When, quite frankly, for example, I just had a meeting with a person that I'm helping, and I know she's an atheist. We're just talking about. I'm very passionate about my faith. I know how to share my faith. I've done my research. I do apologetic studies, and she's an atheist. I know she's an atheist, but this is not the right place. We're talking about real estate. We're talking about how to help her get her Hollywood property.
Real
5
estate
units,
to
be rented out.
apologetics, huh? Yeah. So you know, JJ, not JJ Buen Camino, but Jaye, commented on kind of a period in history, which I think she was referring to 9/11, when there was really a lot of discrimination and explicit and implicit bias towards those of Islamic and Muslim faith,
Correct.
right?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
I would
and
love
think
to
that's
go
wrong.
on your podcast and talk about stuff like this, Jonathan, because I shared with her that I was actually very heavy into church, and what took me out of church was exactly what you just said, apologetics. I think it would be a very great discussion to just kind of talk about apologetics. And at the time, it really put me in a place that I was not prepared to take on that responsibility for a church or for a congregation to go and.
It's very important. It changed. Apologetic studies changed my life because I was, like the word faith, right? The word faith has been used as if, just have faith. No.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is evidence based. I believe in certain things. I believe in I believe in the context of the Bible, everything that it says, because there is evidence to it, right?
So Jonathan, just kind of back to the context of, we have these opinions. You're very passionate about it, and I'm sure, there are Buddhists and there are I don't know if you call them Satanists or satanic worshipers that believe very, very firmly in what they how they perceive things. There are Muslim, Islamic. There are, how many other religions in the world that people feel very, very passionate about.
But the major religions are Jewish, Christianity, and Islam.
So is it, I know you talk about context, but let's just talk about from a pure framework of professionalism.
Correct.
Should I bring that to the table? Is there time that it's appropriate? And then I'm going to just ask for a comparison here. Does that give me any vulnerability in giving information about myself to the people that I'm serving? Do they need to know? And again, I think there's in your case, like a Great Commission, but do they need to know that? Like, I'll give you an example. I had many times, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Right? It's we're gonna have a party for my daughter. Right? 1 year later, that same patient had a card for my daughter on her birthday. It was incredible, man. I was like, holy shit. Like, she listens more than I listen. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be helping her, and she's like paying attention to stuff like this, right? So, that made me really understand how attentive people that we serve, whether it be as healthcare or whether it be in performing a job for their home or whatever it is, how much they pay attention to us, right? And especially in healthcare, where there's like this dependency type of relationship, they're really watching, right? And it made me think about like the other side of it. That was great that this lady had a card 1 year later on my daughter's 27 now. She was like turning 1 or 2, right? That was really, it touched me.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I thought like, holy crap, like, what if like I told somebody like where my kid goes to school? And, we're in a world today where people look at professionals. We just had a very big event in our country, and we had the attempted assassination of a presidential candidate. This is a professional that has a skill set that, half of the country or a certain portion of the country feel is appropriate, that there was an attempt towards assassination. That's how passionate people are about their beliefs. And we're not what's the right word? We're not left out from that in healthcare. People, when we talk about things that are happening in our life, beliefs in our life, they also could have same radical sort of reactions, right? You mentioned somebody that punched you that had a mental disorder, but there are people who are not mentally ill. They would attempt to steal from us, hurt us, things like this, based off of, I said, hey, I like the Dodgers, right? Oh, I like the Angels.
Yeah. Here's my answer to that. Okay, I'm going to answer you first with a question. What is a professional, or what is a professional, or how does someone become a professional? Right.
So if you'd ask me that, I would say that a professional is subject to the profession. Like if I work
Correct.
in the gym, I shouldn't be wearing construction boots. You know what I mean? So I'm going to kind of conform to what's the norm technically, and then also the ethical standards. Again, I'll put it, if I'm in a gym, I'm a gentleman and I'm working with female clients, I wouldn't have, the ethical behavior to be trying to romance them or hit on them or things like this. So there's the technical, there's the ethical, there's the conscientious, and then something we mentioned before you got on was that I really liked when I was a young man as an employee was treating my job or my profession like it was my business. Mm-hmm. So for me, I would really align with those principles of professionalism.
I have my simple answer to my own question is really there's a set of requirements that needs to be fulfilled. Mm-hmm. That's why for example, in nursing school, right, or you want to be a doctor, there are different classes from the professional aspect of it, meaning anatomy, physiology, all these subjects that you go through, and even ethics. I went through ethics when I was a physical therapist, and I was like, I'm trying to be a physical therapist, and why do I have to go through an ethics class, right? Mm-hmm. So definitely, a professional obviously goes through all these courses, right? And you committed. It's a social construct, and it's a social contract that you enter in, mm-hmm. that you're going to try to fulfill that to become a professional yourself.
Yeah.
So whatever is within that box of list of the requirements or that you're supposed to do, you keep it that way. Religion has never been part of that, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anything outside, anything outside of that box is unprofessional. Why is it unprofessional? Because it's not on the list. You just stay on. When it comes to work in the healthcare industry, stay on the list. We don't say on the list that, okay, you have to choose the skin color or the religion. If this guy is a Hindu, if this guy is a Buddhist, if this guy is an Islam, or this guy is a Christian or a Jew or whatever. In the professional sense, it's not listed on that. If it is, I get it, but it's not. To me, that's as simple as that. I always tell people you have a task to do. You have a task that was, you enter into a social contract. Yeah. That you have a task. You as a nurse, do what you're supposed to do, and it doesn't matter how your even morality. I even would say, because I would tell people, right, when I talk about certain jobs, right? Oh, everybody has their own opinion about the character of the person. To me, the character of the person when it comes to surgery I don't think it matters. There's a step-by-step thing that you have to do to make sure that the patient gets better. Even in the nursing industry.
Let's be very explicit about this one, Jonathan. So I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Just for shits and giggles, if you will.
By the way, I'm not prepared for this. Paco just basically texted
Yeah, well, you're on the hot seat now, man. But
I am freaking on the hot seat. I'm perspiring. I'm just kidding.
I don't know how to frame this up.
I'll just frame it for goodness sakes.
Oh, okay. So Hungry Jilly also expresses that she's a born-again Christian as well, Sunday school teacher, and will share when asked about faith. And I'm not leaning one way or another, guys. What I'd like to just keep on the forefront is like, hey, what do we share? When do we share? And then
right place, right time, right situation.
I think so as well. But I also think, let's take it another route. Like, so there's a certain time of year, Lunar New Year, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of healthcare practitioners end up getting these gifts from their patients. And, there's kind of like a no gift type of policy in most healthcare environments, right? But then there's like this cultural tie to the Lunar New Year and being able to gift the people that mean something in your life. So quite oftentimes the facilities that I've been involved with, they set like policy that's specific to certain type of gift givings and times of year on how things can be expressed. But I'm curious if there's that sort of leniency when a patient asks. Like with in the case of Hungry Jilly says, like if my vice president of a large corporation were to sit in, kind of look over and watch my care and see how I interact with a patient, would sharing my politics, my teams. Do you know there's actually a dialysis patient that got shot in a facility because they were on the wrong team?
What?
Yeah, crazy, man. Like this sort of stuff.
We live in crazy times.
Yeah.
Hey, if the former president, had that experience, how much more for you and I not to experience? You know what I'm saying?
That's right. And that's my point.
We live in that world now.
That's my point, Jonathan. Is and I guess that's the cross that many have had to bear in expressing their religion. Right? Is that there will be discrimination and hate and
okay.
Sometimes
you're kind of opening a Pandora's box here of me. Anyways. Here's the thing.
Here we go, babies. Buckle up.
There you go. Buckle up, okay? And here's my humble. Well, not really humble. I have to admit, it's not part of. Paco would always say that guy's not humble.
Hold that. Wait. Hold that thought. I just want to read what Hungry Jilly said, and maybe you can add to it also. Mm-hmm. If someone talks about their religion or politics in the workplace, would you engage, listen, or stop them? Anyway, go back.
And I'd ask, who's that question to, Hungry Jilly, if you're asking one of us specifically?
Yeah.
I would say no. I that's the wrong place, because, as I've said, we have a social contract that entered. When you enter the workplace, you have a job to do. The professional part. There's a list as a manager, right? There's some unwritten rule. There's some basic stuff that I cannot shove into the throats of people. And saying that from a guy, if how many times have I had conversation in the grocery store or in the checkout section, and if I see an opportunity to talk to someone and have the conversation and then share my faith, I do it. Mm-hmm. But not again. That's why the word professional and unprofessional. Those are the things that we're focusing on right now, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm asked, it's one of my favorite verses, right? 1 Peter 3:5 says, if you're be prepared to answer if you're asked of the hope that you have. Say it gently, right? So if I'm asked, hey, that's a good question in a pragmatic way. Hey, that's a good question. Hey, let's have coffee later. I'm not going to answer that question while I'm I'm checking on papers. I'm checking on my nurses and all that stuff. So
no, but if someone talks about like what the three of us are doing now, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
And at the workplace, if someone blurts out something political or religious, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna leave the conversation?
Can I just kind of lighten it up a little bit, because that's fair. That's deep, man. And I think
it's your show, Mike.
Well, let's lighten it up. But I think it will be a good analogy. Is like I always ask this. I say, hey, like a lot of times when I'm teaching people in the healthcare field, they're typically younger people, like in their 20s, 30s. Dialysis people, especially, they're like a lot of younger people, a lot of single things like this, right? And it's like a very fraternizing community. So the people that work together, they go to Jerry's Grill and just like, what's the other one called? Josephine's?
Neupitz.
Yeah, they go all these places together. They have drinks. They go to clubs, stuff like this. They really get along, right? But it's like, I kind of say that you should keep the conversation free of politics, religion, things like this. But I'm going to ask you this. Young people in the break room, and let's all pretend like we're young for a minute, and unless I'm sure there are some people online who are young. And I ask this to the young people I teach, right? There's two people in the break room, and they're talking about sex. Is that professional?
Well, it is unprofessional, but it's in the break room.
Okay, it's in the break room. However,
it's a free country. They can talk whatever they want. But if I had my, a social contract, right? If I had my kids in the break room, again, it's a social contract that you have. If there's ethnicity, there is ethics involved.
So is it possible, though? Let me ask you guys: if two people were in the break room talking about sex, would it offend you? Better yet, let me just ask that. Would it offend you? Anybody online? If two people in the break room talking vulgar, talking about men's bodies or women's bodies.
And I obviously, the answer is no, right? I think the question is, should people be offended? I think that's the right question.
Right.
Because Paco and I, we're crazy
I
people.
I think, should they be? But also, would they be? Is it possible that somebody in that break room would be offended?
It's a matter of will they be? It's a cultural thing. Should they be? As objective, playing with shoving on people's throats right now, shoving information into people's throats right now. Objectively, it's in a break room. It's a free country. It's free speech. They can say whatever they want. If another person would engage into that.
Jonathan, do you have HR in your company? I got to ask you this, man. Sorry, dude.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, do you guys have an HR in your company? If not, I'm going to send somebody over because I think they might hopefully they're not watching, right? They're going to be like, no, you have a problem with that, Jonathan.
At the end of the day, right, when you're not in the confines of the workplace and it's a break room, right? That's why it's called a break room, for goodness sakes, right? When you think about it, I mean, there's a call to break room. It's something that you can smoke, you can eat whatever you want, it's a free country.
Man, I think I'm probably the one of this group who might join in the conversation, but I'm gonna absolutely disagree with you, John. Yeah, I'm gonna absolutely disagree. I think that you should not be talking about those sort of things, even in the break room. I think that.
Hold on a second. That doesn't mean I agree, right? I'm not saying that I agree with them. I'm just saying they can do, as far as a social contract is, they can do whatever they want. Do I agree with them? Heck no. I want to agree to that.
I'll tell you, I would take action. As a hiring manager, I would, if that sort of stuff happened, I would take action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Melissa Lavalle actually said, I would not be offended, but it's not appropriate if you're on the clock.
Yeah.
But then again, you're on break. So technically you're not
That's the break. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So we're
let's go another place then, guys. Let's go another place. And Paco, you're gonna have to probably Google this, but I want to say in the last 10 years there was a major lawsuit in Orange County. I don't remember if it was hospital or the municipality itself. It was it was over a dispute with Filipino and Hispanic, or I should say Filipino speakers and Spanish speakers at work in the break room, and the repercussion of speaking in their native tongue while in the break room, where it was basically not okay for one group, which was the Filipino group, and then it was okay for the Spanish speaker group.
Hey, stop walking on eggshells. Just say it.
Hey, they won. Yeah, they won a big lawsuit, man. So it was over, one group was okay to speak your language. The other group, they were getting in trouble for it. The Filipinos were getting in trouble for speaking in their language, and there was a major lawsuit. And I want to say in the tens of millions of dollars.
$1 million settlement.
Okay.
A group of Filipino nurses who claimed they were mocked for their accents in order to speak English only. But they won.
Was it Orange County?
LA County.
Okay, so it was an Orange County dispute. But, I mean, that kind of goes into professionalism as well, right? Especially in healthcare, speaking in patient's language versus your own language, right? Or for your comfort or the patient's comfort.
Something that you guys want to talk about. This is something that we're going to talk about on our podcast, by the way. Remember, every law, take note of this, okay? Every law is morally based. Before I finish the sentence, right? When a judge sits and decides, or even a jury decides on a case, okay? This is the part that I have to admit, right? This is the part that it is you cannot avoid religion, your personal beliefs. As a jury, as a judge. Don't tell me you don't have biases.
I'm not going to tell you that for sure. I know I do.
Every single
I took the
person
test,
does.
man.
Why? Because of this. Because of this statement. Every law is morally based. Whatever law that is. You will not find a law that's not morally based. The question is, whose morality? That's the question.
I mean, that's a good point based off of what we started with immigrant, right? And skins and different culture. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, because let's just put it this way. If a judge See, that's the point that ultimately, this is the part that I'm, ultimately,
Mooncakes.
when a judge, it is whether it's a Christian or a Jew is an Islam, has biases. They do.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that they don't. Everybody judges. Everybody has biases. Why? Based on what morality they stand on.
Well, I think that's why I brought up the Harvard implicit bias test, because nobody's going to be coming out of that without a new realization of how biased they actually are. I mean, it's very robust, and the things that we don't think about, like it's easy, religion and politics, but there's so many things in life that we could be looking at today, right? So many choices, so many identifications, so many looks and cultures and dress, preferences, these sort of things. So it's very easy to hold a bias against a lot of different things today.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why going back to the professional part, let's bring, hopefully through what we're discussing now through the podcast, let's bring that kind of a morality. Let's get that professionalism where we have set jobs to do. It's defined what we're supposed to do, and stick with that.
Yeah.
There's a right place, a right time, and a right situation where we can talk about other things. If we're in my house, we'll probably talk about a lot of stuff. We'll talk about how Paco ruined my life, stuff like that. I can share that with you.
Oh man, right? I'm interested in hearing that one. Let's pick a kind of a sign off topic here. Let me kind of take a look through a couple of the bullet points I really wanted to focus on tonight. And any questions while I kind of look around here.
And I'm gonna give this another 7 minutes, and I got to prepare from some other stuff. So
that sounds good.
Yeah,
we really appreciate you. Really appreciate you jumping on. How about?
Oh, by the way, I'm loving this conversation. By the way, thank you, Paco. Even though I really don't like him on a personal note, I really appreciate that he invited me to join in. So
yeah,
this is such an experience for me. Thank you.
So let's talk about just this topic of like the confidentiality and the level of security that we have to hold. And again, as a professional, right? So if we had a guy on here that was buying a bunch of paving companies, right? And like I think about all these companies that are big today, like solar panels and stuff like this. The second I filled out a form for a solar panel, I got spammed all over the place. Like they sold my stuff to everybody, right? I got so many things calling me, right? So obviously they don't really, in that side of things, they don't really respect the privacy of your personal information, right? Like your ID and information, phone numbers and addresses and emails and stuff like that. But in healthcare, it's a lot different, right? Like I ran a pretty big COVID operation in the first wave in Orange County, and we had like a lot of, we just had a lot of people coming through, but there were a lot of VIPs from the county, actors and celebrities and things like this that would come on the sites as well. And part of our initial training, we were just bringing people on every day, starting them kind of like on the spot. We'd train them and get them out on the lines, right? And it was like, hey, who's your favorite actor or singer, right? And I at that time, I remember a lot of the young girls were like, oh, Nick Jonas, right? So they're like, I was like, well, what if Nick Jonas came?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. What if Nick Jonas came through the line, right? And I was like, would you feel like, going home and telling some people about it, right? I'm curious if you've ever had anybody had the experience where you were starstruck or, there were circumstances around a patient that you were ready to fire it out, right? You wanted to tell somebody, and then you're bound by this thing called HIPAA, right? The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, to really not be able to discuss or disclose anything that would ID anybody with any part of their information related to their healthcare experience or their health experience.
The reality, the reality of this is I've seen it, I've experienced it, where they just can't help themselves. But at least it stays within a few of their friends.
If Paco was in your facility, you'd want to tell somebody, wouldn't you?
Oh no, no, thank you. No thanks. No, I'm proud of him. He's great, man. It's another conversation that we need to have. A roasting day of Paco Raspocachaga. We'll probably be doing that.
Him and G3 did that to me.
Oh yeah. So, anyways, again, the confines of a contract. Keep it. I think everybody should realize through this what we're talking about that right now, the podcast. It was written. It was placed there for a reason, right? So, to me, at the end of the day, we have a social contract that we should not be violating and keep it that way. Yeah. I will. I've had experience myself, and it's also the way you're wired. You know, I would meet celebrities or whatever. It's unless I'm a big sports guy. So the only time I get starstruck is when I meet an athlete, like especially in the NBA.
Right. Not the PBA. What about PBA?
Not really.
You're not a fan? Oh, wow. All right.
Not really. I've always been an NBA guy from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
For the time that the rivalry of the Boston Celtics and Lakers, I've always been an NBA guy, not much of a PBA guy. And I got a chance to meet. I had a chance to hang out with some of those guys, and you know, it doesn't, you know, I don't get starstruck. But let's just, at the end of the day, we have a job to do.
Yep.
And I think what we're emphasizing tonight is that as professionals, let's keep the social contract that we signed in a virtual way. Right?
Yeah.
Let's keep it that way. And I think everybody should be doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
There's a place for everything. And then when it comes to, again, think about it, right? Think about it. It's supposed to be a safe. I mean, when someone is sick, someone is sick, someone has a medical condition. Don't add to their misery.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
you know,
that's gold right there, Jonathan. I 100% agree with that. We all got complicated lives, but then when you're in those positions of need for healthcare services, like you've got life plus a lot stacked on your plate, and then you got to deal with this person, right? That is not acting professionally, or you know, takes things personally, which quite often happens in healthcare, right? And you know, maybe my life is not as good, or maybe it's not as enjoyable when I go near Morales. Like I always say this is, and I really appreciate your time. So I want to be respectful of the 7 minutes you gave us, but I'll end with this with you is I always say that as a healthcare professional, that we're not just there to do a procedure. We're there to be therapeutic. And you know, the presence that we have, the gentle, I like the word you used there, the gentle nature on how we communicate, how we share, how we receive is part of that therapy. You know, putting needles and changing adult briefs and showering and ADLs, that's just part of it, right? But the real therapy comes in that personal interaction. And I think professionalism, you've shared a lot with us tonight that's been very helpful. So I look forward to
I'll give you my last point. As a Christian, right? I would extend the extra mile as I was told by my beliefs, right? To love your brother or your sister, a total stranger. My responsibility is to love, because there's two major commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. The second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I don't have to be telling people that I'm a Christian.
Right.
I don't have to.
Yeah.
But through my works, through the responsibility that I have, I'm going to do the extra mile to actually make them ask me,
that's
why
great.
Are you different from the others? And there's an opportunity for me. If I'm asked that question, I'll say, can we have coffee? We can't talk about this here, but can we have coffee outside of this confines of this work? And I would be happy to have coffee with you or have lunch with you. And I say, I'll tell you why. And I'll make them ask rather than shove them to their throats, but I'm acting differently.
Well, I think that's a great way of approaching shared beliefs. You know, the only commentation I would have with that is, like, specifically within the settings that I work, I know that, you know, kind of the door is the end of the relationship for dialysis techs, dialysis nurses. Like, once they exit that facility, coffee would be not appropriate either, which is quite difficult for a lot of people because we're such tight communities,
Yes, it is.
right? So
That's true.
Such tight communities.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right.
So, Jonathan, thank you so much, and I do look forward to further conversations. If there's ever a spot for me to join you and share some of my opinions and beliefs, count me in.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Paco.
For sure. 100%. I'll definitely be returning the favor. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Paco, for inviting me. Man, once in a while I'll be hopping in, and Paco will text me whenever you guys have the podcast. I'm one of those guys who would be watching and supporting you guys.
That's
Thank
awesome.
You very
We
much for this
appreciate you, man.
opportunity.
You're welcome.
You guys have a good night.
You as well. And guys, we'll close out with some final thoughts. I think that really that was great, Paco. Great guy, Jonathan. There a lot of good heart. Sounds like good experience. I'm looking forward to learning more about what he does in healthcare and his approaches towards. Hopefully we're aligned on therapeutic, right? I want to touch on just a couple things that we were talking about confidentiality. We didn't touch too much on just the business-like manner and taking ownership, but a conscientious employee, a conscientious professional, thinking about the business, but also the individuals that are served. So you got to think. I'll kind of use some stupid terms here, but like commercially and patient-centrically, right? Like in the United States, companies have to find a margin of profit to be able to take care of more people. And I can remember as a young clinician not really thinking about that either. It's like, hey, can you give me a Band-Aid, Morales? And I'd be like, here's a box. Sorry. I'm not going to say what company I was working for at the time because they're going to try and come back and claw back on those boxes of Band-Aids I gave away or whatever it was. But, I was really, I didn't think much about that. And then it's like, if you can go to McDonald's today, they go like, how many ketchup do you want? You ask for 5, they'll give you 2, and then you have to ask for 3. That's how thoughtful they are about their business. And that's fast food, right? So I think being a conscientious employee is something really, really important. On time, every time. Everybody should live by that.
I agree.
It's California. We're in California. Some of our audience are in places where maybe traffic is a thing, but traffic's not an excuse. Like you got to go like, hey, how do I get on time in the worst case scenario? Because people need me in healthcare anyways, right?
Yep.
And you know what? I told you when I was an iron worker, if I was late, they'd tell go home. Like we already started.
You were always on time.
Not as an iron worker, man. I would I figured out if I'm not on time, I'm turning around and going home or going to Denny's, right? So again, I really enjoyed my times there, but it wasn't for me. I did it for a decent amount of time. Personal problems, we talked about personal beliefs and opinions, but when you're caring for people, anybody have experience with, like a patient ever asked you, hey, how are you doing? Did you ever share something bad with them? And then they go like, or maybe it doesn't have to be a patient. Do you ever share something bad with somebody that then took it on themselves, Paco? Or
Yes, I mean, because sometimes, it really depends. I've encountered superficial, how are you doing? Like, just for the heck of saying it. And I've encountered people who took it seriously when they would ask, how are you doing? And you say something, it's like they want to get that monkey and take care of it and make it theirs.
Yeah.
And most of the people are Goldilocks. It starts it makes for a small talk conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I've encountered all three.
Well, I mean, I can tell you this, my experiences, maybe some of you have the same experience as a healthcare professional, or maybe you're a patient. But I told you about a lady who remembered my daughter's birthday a year later, right? Like she was so thoughtful about me, like I was the priority in her life. And if I were to tell her, like, my daughter's sick, holy shit, man.
Right.
I've heard patients. So there was a time when dialysis techs had to become, this is when we met, like they had to become certified. And then all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to start a business now.
Yeah.
Because there's a way to educate dialysis technicians so that they can gain that certification. And we've been super successful at that as far as like the passage rates and things like this, right? So some of the people who I helped review before you and I met in my house that was about 2 blocks from here, in my garage on weekends, I asked them, I said, they had already failed their test. This was before I started the school. Kind of the reason why I started the business was so many people were failing. Every weekend I would have 20, 30, 40 technicians that were already working but needed to pass their test to stay certified or get certified per a new regulation in my house, in my garage, barbecuing, studying, reviewing, right? They all passed. They went and told their administrators, and they're like, oh, you should start a school. So this is literally how it started, right? But it was, I asked them, how many of you told your patients that you failed the test? And some of them like, oh, yeah, me. And I was like, what? Like, what? Like, what do you think they were thinking? And they were like, oh, yeah, my patient, she started a 24-hour prayer circle in her church. So I was like, so you're telling me that you told this person who you're caring for that you failed their test, and they went and involved a whole damn church, not only their time, but to make a 24-hour prayer circle. Like, that's so much time in motion for you, man. So it made me think about like sharing problems, which it's not their place to take care of us.
But you're giving them an opportunity to decide on that.
Well, I mean,
yes or no?
I think you are, but why should they
burden them?
Yeah, why burden them? Like I already got it. Like I know what this feels like. Like I already got so much stuff. Don't bring me another thing.
Right. That's the monkey on your back philosophy we're in.
I only know that from business. Imagine health, like, right? Like that's insane. So you got your health, but then you're going to go worry about, Mike might lose his job because he didn't pass his test. Then, he's the one who puts the needle in me. Remember Jonathan said like the patients care so much about the people who put the needles in them because like, that guy puts it in really smooth. That guy, he's no good. If he's not here, I'm going to have to deal with that one.
True.
Or somebody I don't know. There's a lot of comfort in the relationship that techs and patients have. So, again, whether it's there or whether it's like you're going on the construction job and you come in, you're like, I didn't pay my rent and, I got to bail my wife out of jail and stuff like this. Like, this is some of the stuff I remember. Like, your boss don't care about that and they don't have time for that. So, there's this balance of, like, being humane. And, yeah, we understand everybody has problems. But as an employee, it's your job to not put that on your boss, not put that on the people you're serving.
And you know what? That's also being humane.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Two sides, right? Being humane is to listen, but please be humane to me. Don't burden me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a safe statement, an accurate statement. You never want to like go around patients or people. Somebody came to do some work on my house, right? Right away, like my wife's like 4'9" or whatever, she's 10 or whatever. Like she's a little tiny lady, right?
Are you allowed to say that? I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, but if let's say the roofer came to my house, which they did recently for solar panels and roofing, like who do you think they want to talk to?
You or the wife?
No, they want to talk to me.
They want to talk to you.
Yeah, they want to talk to me, but actually, I'm not the one to talk to.
Right.
I already got a lot of shit going on, right? Like, talk to her, right?
That's
like,
what I meant.
Yeah, they should talk to her because I got stuff to do. Like, talk to her. She'll tell me if there's a problem, which we did end up having a problem. Then it was come to me. I had to make the phone calls and kind of get them back to come finish their job, right? So not going around people who are, hey, I told you to talk to my wife. Don't go talk to me because you think I'm a man and I'm going to be the one. No, she's the one who's handling this project in the house, or she's the one who's making this, whatever it might be in that certain case, right? In healthcare, talk to me. I can hear, I can talk. I'm alert and oriented. You always just tell my daughter or my niece or somebody else and you don't talk directly to me. Get eye level with people and communicate with the individual who it actually matters to, who the outcome is really going to affect.
There's a book about what you just said. It's called Selling to Veto.
Selling to Veto.
Yeah. Veto stands for very important top officer.
Okay.
It's not really the decision maker. It's the person you need to be speaking with. Like in this case, Kat, right?
Yeah, don't go around. Like otherwise you're just wasting your time. And also it's not efficient communication. It's not the person who's got the responsibility. I talked about whistling and shouting on construction sites. Well, clinical environments should also be very peaceful and respectful and certain language, right? When I say language, like one that the patient can understand and also not vulgar and not off topic. That is, when we talked about task, which I think was very heavy from Jonathan's discussion, like that's not what we're here for. So why am I talking about something else? It has nothing to do with what I'm here for, right? And then again, just to reinforce, like translation, especially when you're like in a relationship services type of situation, even in construction, right? Like you have to have communication of who's doing the service to the person who needs it. And the person who needs it is the one who has the need to understand. So if I'm the professional and let's say I don't speak your language, I should find means of translation, which there are a lot of means of translation. We could be an individual, a person, or it could be a technology, which is like quite often the case in healthcare, right? I mentioned just what we wear to work and how we look. It's professional appearance is important. I would expect a construction worker to have a hard hat and gloves and certain type of boots, right? I would expect a person in a gym to not be wearing that, to be wearing some sort of gym flexible, something that they can move around. And I would expect somebody in a legal office to be in professional attire. I would expect somebody in a tattoo parlor to probably have tattoos, looking like the profession. Maybe you don't look like the profession. Maybe you don't have tattoos and you're a tattoo artist. That's a possibility. But you kind of expect like proper attire and behavior to kind of follow that technical and ethical standard, right?
Perception. Like you can't be a rock star without looking like a rock star.
Yeah, you're right. So on that note, groom yourself, right? I don't know. A rock star, you're supposed to groom yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're supposed to groom yourself and you're supposed to take a shower, but you're supposed to look like you're not taking a shower.
There we go. All right. So I think that's the big time style today, right? It's like grungy as possible, hair not combed. So you just woke up out of bed, but you got to take a shower. Right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that makes sense. So yeah, the way you groom yourself in healthcare, especially, like that's pretty important. Nobody wants to smell your cigarettes, or to be honest with you, nobody wants to smell your cologne or perfume either.
True.
Like they're held hostage to what you smell like, and what you bring into their environment. That they're there because they need care, right? We should be quiet and peaceful and conscientious of the energy level in a room that's giving care.
Right.
When we're going to do something, if we're going to go do a job on your house, I should have all the tools and the supplies I need to do that job. When I'm going to do a job in healthcare, if I'm going to draw blood from somebody, I should have all the supplies I need to draw their blood, not go like, oops, hold on, put the tourniquet, let me go get this, back and forth. That sort of stuff looks sloppy and unprofessional. It happens, but it should be planned for. Professionals plan, right? They don't just wing it. We should keep our areas clean. That goes for construction too. That's like actually really big in construction, because a big hazard to an occupation is having a cluttered and messy work environment. You get hurt in places where you don't keep clean.
And in healthcare, infection control.
That's a big one. Unknown, the unseen, right? Yeah. Like you're going to get hurt by something you don't even see. Which is quite different than construction. Like you're going to see a crane falling on you, or a forklift running into you, or, you hammer yourself, hammer your finger with a nail.
Very true.
Yeah. You done that one, huh? Boundaries. I talked about this a little bit, but one thing that I actually wanted to bring up with Jonathan, and I've met several people who have met their spouses in the clinical environment. Like they were a nurse or technician, and then they found somebody in the chair and fell in love and ended up married. And, even in one case, like gave a living donation to the person. And I'm not a person that says, hey, when you find love, like get it. But I would say that if I found love in the healthcare setting, that now I lose some of my objectivity to the task at hand.
True.
And I would need to remove myself from that specific link to where both of us are not there together. Because if I'm here with you and I'm, head over heels with you, I'm not going to be able to focus on the patient, right? Or the task at hand. And also, when we get in a fight and a disagreement, now we're at work together and there's some sort of havoc, which, when we think about professionalism, maybe when we're younger, not always when we're younger, we react to things differently than when we're older. I've literally seen women and men come in and beat up some of the spouses. Actually, hey, you guys in California, did you have to take this mandatory workplace violence courses, right? Just recently, this is new law, right?
Yeah.
And the number one cause of workplace violence was not coworkers, it is the spouses or the people around the coworkers. So coming in and wanting to kick your ass because you hit on my lady or my boyfriend or whatever, that kind of stuff happens. I've seen that happen in dialysis centers, actually.
Wow.
Not a good look, right? So yeah, you're not supposed to date or have social interaction. You're supposed to have professional interaction. If you find a conflict of interest, you should be responsible, own up to it, and seek transfers to keep an objective and a safe workplace, and as well as a place to get care. I would never borrow money from my clients, whether I was doing construction, whether I was providing health care, whether I was providing marketing. So I wouldn't borrow, hey, can I borrow 10 grand so that I can do the job for you, right? Or, hey, I take care of you as a dialysis patient. Can I borrow 5,000 because I know you won the lotto, right? In reality, like a lot of people who need our care feel like if they don't give us favor, that they may lose favor of their own.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not going to give you as good a care if you don't, these sort of things. So one example I would say is like not borrowing money, but we had a lady who used to bring gifts in, which we talked about the red envelopes, and Jilly mentioned the moon cakes, but this lady used to bring in pizza for the whole center. Big pizza, like few boxes, right? And it's like, oh, well, she's buying for the whole clinic, so it's okay.
Right.
But not everybody in the clinic could buy pizza. And that lady got treated really well, Paco. Like, she got like favoritism because she was the pizza lady, right?
What if she stopped bringing pizza?
I don't know. She never did.
Oh.
But the guy who didn't bring pizza didn't get that same sort of behavior is what I'm getting at. So that's just, we got to be cognizant of that as well, right? Touching patients inappropriately, physical harm, or sexually, or just without a accepted invite. Like if I'm going to take somebody's blood pressure, I don't just grab their arm and put a blood pressure cuff. If I'm going to put needles in the arm, which we do with dialysis patients, I'm just go, okay, you're here, like, and put a needle in them. Like, that's their body. I first have to announce and instruct and get permission, whether it's physical, like, okay, or, sure, you can do that. Let me pull up but verbal, like one of the two, right? And we should be conscious about people's personal space and all professionalism. I think culturally there's, when we talked about people coming from all around the world, like, I have a friend, she's Italian. I'm not going to say her name because it's not the best feature. But when she talks to you, like, she gets so close that she's going to spit in your eye or in your mouth if you had your mouth. Like, if she, sprays it instead of says it, you're going to get blasted with it because she's too close. So again, guys, just thinking about being professional, there's a lot to it. Keeping healthy, Paco.
Yeah, very important.
Hey, I'm sick. Okay, yeah. People get sick. I'm sick again. Huh, you were sick last week. I'm sick again. Like, all of a sudden you start to sound like full of shit, right? In reality, you could be very sick because in some cases we don't take care of ourselves properly. In some cases, maybe, especially when we're younger, I'm, stereotyping, we may go hard on days off to where when we end up at work, we're like useless. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the night before, I was out like,
Extended
hangover, playing the guitar,
yeah,
playing the drums, and like, I got to be up at 3 a.m. I went to bed at 1 a.m. That's not taking care of yourself, right? You got to be thoughtful about traffic and parking and all these sort of things. You can't, like me when I was a kid in the ironworking trade, like go like, oh, I'm already late. Turn around, right? You got to plan so that you're not late. So there was traffic, the freeway's down, whatever happens, that you're going to be there. The commitment that we talked about earlier is something that if you look at people who own, start, run businesses, the level of commitment, they're not special, smart. Sometimes people are smarter than others, but that's not what it is. They're committed. They take pride. The job's not done till it's done, and it can always be done better.
Amen.
And sometimes I don't have the answer, so I find the person who has the answer. Like that's a real flex, being able to say, like, I don't have all the answers, so I'm going to find the people who have the answers. I'm not the best, so I'm going to find the best.
Yep.
You know, like, this is something that I seek to learn as a business owner, business leader, is how to be more humble professionally and find the right person for the job. Sometimes the job for me may be to just do that, just to find the right answer. In a healthcare setting, sometimes that is my job. Is like, I'm not the person to answer the question about your diet or about that specific aspect of your diet, but let me get the dietitian, right? Jonathan said he likes the NBA. Man, these people in the NBA, they play in like these plays, you know, in their positions and their teams. They know what everybody's going to be doing, and they know who needs to get the ball to get it to the hoop. And that's that's what we got to do with healthcare. Is we got to know who needs the ball to get it to the hoop, which the hoop is the outcome, the desired outcome. There's always something to do. So, you know, in construction, I remember as an iron worker, my dad told me, hey, if you don't have anything to do, pick up wire. Pick up stuff off the ground.
Okay.
Always be busy. Always be, they had a crazy term, and I'm going to use it just because I'm telling the story, guys, but forgive me. But they used to say assholes and elbows. What does that mean? Most of the day, iron workers were bent over, tying rebar. So most of the day when I look at you, if you're standing up, you're not doing anything. So I should see your
butt crack.
and your elbows, right? All right, guys. This has been a great, I think, a great musings opportunity. I'm glad that we had the special guest here, Jonathan, another healthcare professional. Haven't had the chance to meet him personally yet and get more of his story, but look forward to diving into it. I'm glad that all of you who have joined us and commented, shared some of your experience. I think we should take steps every day to become professional, more professional, a better professional. Steps every day to be able to mentor those that are looking at us, to not have to go through the same things that we're going through. And I'm just going to end with the fatherhood thing that I've shared with you guys a lot of times. Is, you know, I watch my kids, and me and Paco talk about this a lot, and it's like, you know, you can't make their decisions for them. You can't coddle them too much, but that doesn't mean that you hold your lip. That doesn't mean that you agree with everything that an individual does, and that you don't hold them accountable when they make mistakes. Kids, colleagues, employees, that's a part of the process. And, you know, for me personally, I can say that I see fatherhood just like I see professionalism, that at 47, I'm starting to figure it out. And my kids are grown up. You know what I mean? I have one that's 10. So my advice to everybody is, when you think about like that growth in yourself as a professional, a father, a mother, an auntie, an uncle, a godfather, whatever it might be, you know, you really don't have that much time to get it right. And when you finally start to see it, you may have lost opportunities, teaching opportunities that can only come from you getting it right. Otherwise, you teach another lesson that may even seem cool to some of the kids. And the things that we do as young men can be very dangerous. We don't want our kids to learn these lessons. We don't want our patients to learn these lessons. So we advise. I think part of the growth in professionalism is finding a way to advise and be heard. You know, it sometimes, it may not even be you. Like I said, you may need to pass the ball, even in family, right? Even in family, you might have to pass the ball to somebody that they will listen to. Omar, thank you. Yeah, sleep with one eye open tonight. One eye open tonight. Sleep with one eye tonight. Yeah, but sleep with one eye open, right? Yeah, we got to be mindful of our environment. Guys, again, thank you for tuning in. Make sure that if you are not by now, subscribe, like, continue to comment. Tell us what you think of the podcast, what you think of the guests that we've been having on. We've been doing a lot more just musing type of casts with injections of education. But we're really interested in hearing kind of what you want to hear. I'll say one thing to look forward really soon is I have been kind of talking to some of the prospective guests that we are looking at, and I think we have a couple gaps in like our educational type of conversations. One is if you are a dialysis nurse, I know we had one on tonight, peritoneal dialysis and stroke nurse, like we haven't had that voice on the podcast yet, the nursing aspect of this. And then I have a good friend that I've met from the industry that's a local hotshot transplant surgeon that has committed to being here, but we're just trying to carve out that time. So those of you who have questions about the workup towards transplant, candidacy, the process, what's the right word? Registering with different transplant organizations and really having the best shot. Very soon, I would say within the next month, we'll have this gentleman on, and I'm really looking forward to that. So with that, Paco, thank you for everything tonight. Jonathan De La Paz, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing the insight, sharing some of your beliefs, and look forward to chatting with you again. Hungry Jilly, JJ, Camila, Melissa, Justin, everybody who jumped on with us tonight. It's great to have your support. And like I said, just keep telling us what you want to hear, who you want to see, what's important to you. And you guys have an open invitation to jump on with us as well. So with that, I will see you guys next week. I have a big week ahead of me. I'll be traveling to Houston, Texas. So if any of you are in Houston, Texas, like, where should I go eat? I know there was a big storm there. I got a buddy out there that
See that comment?
What's that? Thank you, JJ. Please, continue to look out for the new episodes that we post out. And was that there's no filters with some tech? Yeah, that's true. That is true. Some technicians are no. So Omar, our good friend here, I think he's got some stories to tell one of these days, but at the right time.
We got to get JJ to guest on the podcast also. So.
I agree. Yeah. So again, JJ, if you have the appetite, we definitely could use the lens and the voice of a dialysis nurse. And in your case, I believe you said peritoneal dialysis nurse. We've had quite a few stories about peritoneal dialysis, but not from the lens of the training nurse. So with that, guys, I'll sign out. Enjoy the rest of the evening and see you very soon.
This episode has been brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.